The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The Boston series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Hello folks, welcome back to Boston once again. I learned my lesson yesterday. When you're covering these fenland villages, don't wear a thick hoodie. At the end of the Amber Hill episode yesterday, I was sweating my absolute nuts off. So that's come off, and hopefully I should feel a bit more freedom as we go around this one. There's not going to be much walking involved in this one though, and the reason for that is because this is a true linear village on one of these fenland droves. You can't really form a circular route around this. It's also got a lot of, shall we say, isolated places that aren't within the main village, if you can term there a main village here. We'll soon see. This is Holland Fen with Brothertoft. Holland Fen with Brothertoft, Woodland Marsh with Brothers Curtilage. So then Boston, yesterday we covered Amber Hill, which is only half of the story as far as Holland Fen goes. Today we're on the other side of the fen as we take on Holland Fen with Brothertoft. Now, as the name indicates, this consists of the two villages of Holland Fen and Brothertoft, but it also includes some lesser known areas like Pelham's Land, for example. Like Amber Hill, Holland Fen is a long, narrow strip of flat fenland reclaimed for agricultural use. It's bounded to the northeast by the River Witham and on the opposite edge by the 10-foot drain. It stretches from the A1121 road at Gilberts Bridge almost to Chapel Hill in the north, where the Kyle O forms the boundary. Unlike Amber Hill, we can't really walk around this one as easily. There will be a little amble through Holland Fen itself, but for the most part we're driving for almost this entire episode. On our travels, we'll encounter two churches, two village halls, a railway station, a golf course, and lots of farmland. We'll also be talking a little bit about Langrick Bridge here too, which crosses the River Witham. The area is notable for its large-scale, flat, open landscape with extensive vistas to level horizons. The huge skies seen all around here convey a strong sense of tranquility and inspiration. You can't get much more Lincolnshire than that. In all, Holland Fen with Brothertoft can be described as quite an eclectic mix of stuff, despite the fact it's generally all flat. Don't ever tell me it's flat and boring in Lincolnshire. This video will prove that theory wrong. Okay, so in essence, our journey through Holland Fen will start in the north of the parish and end in the south, where we'll be reunited with the A1121, where we began yesterday. In the very far north of the parish, the land covered by Holland Fen is known by a couple of different names. These are Hart's Grounds and Pelham's Lands. Both are former civil parishes in their own right, and separating them from one another is an almost dead straight watercourse called the North 40-foot Drain. Hart's Grounds was formerly an extra-parochial area prone to flooding prior to the drainage of Holland Fen in 1767. It was abolished when Holland Fen with Brothertoft was created in 1935. It was then, and remains today, an area of isolated farms. It only had one notable building, Hart's Grounds Farmhouse, which was 18th century. It's now been demolished. Pelham's Land's name originates from the Pelham family, who held land here from 1602. Sir William Pelham owned a Woad mill in this area. Again, it too was formerly an extra-parochial tract before becoming a parish in 1858. The peak of its population came in 1971, a whopping 64 people. There was once a tower windmill at Pelham's Lands, built in 1838 to replace an earlier post mill which had blown down. The mill lost its cap in 1926, after which it was engine-driven. Now mostly demolished, only a single derelict story remains. The north 40-foot drain between the two is one of the widest on the Fens. Running for around 6 miles in total, it links Chapel Hill in North Kesteven to Toft Tunnel just north of Gilberts Bridge. There was once a row of 29 brick and slate cottages on the north 40-foot bank, the drove that runs parallel to the drain. They were located at Brothertoft. They were built to accommodate the workers of Cartwright's Woad mill in the late 18th century. The hamlet was often termed Isatica, the Latin term for Woad. After Cartwright left Brothertoft for London, Isatica fell into ruin and disappeared. Now, Brothertoft doesn't have a lot left, barring a church and a village hall, but we'll catch those later. Okay, so now we're entering Holland Fen village. As a settlement, this is approximately 5 miles northwest of Boston and less than a mile away from the River Witham. It hasn't always been known as Holland Fen. Historically, it was called Hout Huntre, or 800 Fen. It was in 1720 when Earl Fitzwilliam decided to drain Holland Fen, having been frustrated by the local commissioners of sewers. It was he who built the north 40-foot drain, which emptied by Lodowick's Gout into the River Witham above Grand Sluice. The north 40-foot was subsequently diverted to the south 40-foot drain at Cook's Lock, and from there to Boston Haven through the Black Sluice. Holland Fen is as linear as a settlement can really be. Sandwiched between the north 40-foot drain and the lush agricultural land of the Fens, everything of note is on this one road. Until 1767, or perhaps slightly later, Holland Fen village simply did not exist. This was a huge marsh, like most of the Fens were, and thus this place has no ancient history. Well, in much the same way as in Amber Hill yesterday, it's a lengthy old drive along this drove. I've driven about 3 miles already, and you've seen quite a lot of the northern parts of Holland Fen, the Pelham's lands and the Hart's ground, shall we say. We've made a stop though here before we drive on, because next we have the parish hall, which you can see just there, and behind that is the church. This here is the parish hall, which is sometimes known as the Holland Fen Community Hall. Although I have no idea when this was built, it features a notable triple lancet window. That echoes the east window of the church's chancel, which is behind this building. Together with the village hall in Brothertoft, this accounts for all of the communal buildings in this parish. I had a bit of a stroke of luck when I got here. Apparently this hall is currently undergoing some sort of renovation, and so it was open. I was allowed to go in and have a look around. Well folks, that's the power of social media, because they knew I was coming. I put a post up in a few groups the other day saying that I was going to be around here, and yeah, they kind of expected me. That's actually amazing. So I got to see inside the parish hall, which is something we don't normally see. Now, behind the parish hall, as I said a moment ago, you've got the church. Let's go and check this out. Holland Fen's church is dedicated to All Saints and was built as a chapel of ease to Fosdyke in 1812. It was constructed of brick in the Perpendicular style, with just a chancel, a nave and a bell turret. The reason for its construction was simple. It was to serve the brand new settlement when it was first established. It wasn't until 1824 that this was rededicated as a parish church in its own right. In 1964, Pevsner noted a chancel dated 1880, a west gallery on iron shafts, a pulpit with fluted pilasters, and a chalice, probably by William Bell. In terms of religious buildings, Holland Fen also once had a chapel known as Barley Sheaf. It was erected in 1864 for the Wesleyan Methodists. It was extended and altered in 1958 and closed in 1993. Keep the Barley Sheaf name in mind, because later that will crop up again. Let's drive on through the rest of Holland Fen village, which is mostly houses, although halfway along the street is a big tower. Built in 1940, it's a water tower made of reinforced concrete. It comprises a large circular tank resting on a circular tower column. Quite often, a British flag is seen flying from the top. Our next stop on the way out of the village is a bridge over the North 40-foot drain. It looks like nothing spectacular, but I haven't stopped here for nothing. This is Bailey Bridge. Maps from 1903 show that Bailey Bridge Farm's vehicular entrance was on Curtain Drove, a long way to the west. At the time, there was only a footbridge across the North 40-foot drain. That's all changed with the construction of this bridge. This is a modular steel bridge designed by Donald Bailey, a civil servant in the War Office. It was in use for military purposes by December 1941. Nobody knows what the farm was called before the bridge was installed, but today Bailey Bridge is one of Holland Fen's best known spots. Well, it's definitely a bit rickety, is Bailey Bridge, and it's got a few holes in it, so if you are going to drive over it, I imagine you've got to do so with great care. Fortunately, I don't have to do that because it would take me away from where I need to go. We've dealt with Holland Fen village, but there's still quite a bit to cover in this one yet. Most of it's going to be done by driving, so we're going to hop in the car again and head away from Holland Fen village and down towards a place called Langrick Bridge. Okay, so now we're on the move again, and this time we're off to a place called Langrick Bridge. That means leaving behind North 40-foot Bank for a short time, because Langrick Bridge is on the Witham. Langrick Bridge sits on the southern side of the bridge of the same name, which spans the river. North of the bridge is Langrick Village, but that's in East Lindsey in the parish of Langreville. Langrick Bridge used to be known as Langrick Ferry because before the bridge was built in 1909, crossing the river was only possible by using a boat. It was a chain ferry, and that's why this road here that leads to Langrick Bridge from North 40-foot Bank is called Ferry Lane. No real surprises there. Although it's not clear when the ferry began, it was definitely in operation in 1723. A map by William Stukely dating from that time shows the route of the ferry over the Witham. However, on that map, the river course is very different. The Witham used to be a windy, meandering affair until it was artificially straightened in 1828. The canalisation of the river was both upstream and downstream of the ferry, although settlement boundaries followed the old course of the river. This setup continued until construction plans for a bridge at Langrick Ferry were prepared in 1906, and soon the ferry was a thing of the past. So here we have the bridge, which has boat moorings on both banks. The next nearest moorings are 5 miles upstream at Chapel Hill and 2 miles downstream at Anton Scout. Langrick Bridge is known as a steel bow girder bridge. It was completed in 1908 and opened a year later. Its construction was funded in part by the Great Northern Railway. That's because they controlled the Witham navigation, but the railway line that once served Langrick never crossed this bridge. Instead, it ran along the northern side of the riverbank. The bridge was also funded by the two former county councils, Holland and Lindsey, because this bridge provided a road link between them. It cost, in total, £8,490 to construct. It carries some attractive wrought iron decoration incorporating the shields of the two county councils either side of the Witham. The total length of the bridge is 174 feet or 53.4 metres and has a centre span of 120 feet or 36.6 metres. Even now, more than a century after its opening, Langrick Bridge is still as important as ever around here. Now, as you might expect, the bridge is the biggest feature here in Langrick Bridge, hence the name, but there are a few other things as well. If I just hop out of the way, you might be able to see one of them. Yeah, just to the left of shot here, there's a chapel, or an old chapel just there. And speaking of chapels, there's also something to do with an old chapel, which is in front of a petrol station you can find here too. Whilst most of the buildings in Langrick Bridge hamlet are detached and semi-detached houses, it also contains 2 farms, a fuel station and a shop that sells boating equipment and food supplies. In front of the petrol station you can find something to do with Langrick Ferry Chapel, and here is what it is. Okay, we're in the car again and we're off to Brothertoft next. Now this might well be the most interesting part of this episode, even though Brothertoft is extremely small. Evidence has been found that the area now known as Brothertoft was familiar to Romano-British people. The site of a possible building linked to them was uncovered at Cannon's Farm in Punchbowl Lane between 1957 and 1959. A Roman vase was dug up in 1970 at a separate site. The hamlet was first recorded at some point between 1350 and 1540. It was mentioned in the diocesan return of 1563 as having 10 households. The traditional belief for the origins of the village's name is that 2 brothers were granted some land they could enclose. The word toft is thought to come from the Danish occupiers of Lincolnshire in ancient times and has the meaning of homestead or enclosure, so that would maybe make sense. Brothertoft likely originated as a vacary, literally a cowshed belonging to Swineshead Abbey. You may remember that term from our travels in the Peak District earlier this year. Now all of that means that Brothertoft was originally an island. As we know, most of this area was a marsh, but this place occupied a relatively raised portion above the fens. However, the raised position did not prevent Brothertoft from periodic flooding. For example, in 1763, the villagers were forced to live in the upper stories of buildings due to excessive water ingress. This issue was eventually solved when the fens were drained by the Dutch engineers, but it didn't please everyone. In 1767, the inhabitants of Brothertoft, who occupied 52 houses in the hamlet, rioted in protest against the enclosure of Holland Fen. They regarded this land as being for their pleasure and sustenance, and in particular as a location for fishing and fowling. The common land had also traditionally been the scene of an annual fair called the Toft Drift, which lasted for a week every July, attracting visitors from nearby villages and from Boston too. Aside from general rioting and the removal of recently erected fencing, up to 200 people also played football on the land in an attempt to assert their historic rights. The rioting situation led to serious injury and even some deaths. It would appear, though, that the Brothertoft residents eventually gave in. Brothertoft's land has been owned by various people throughout history. The Carr family of Sleaford were in possession of it in the mid-1600s. Names such as the Hollies, the Pelhams and Charles Frederick were also associated with the place, but perhaps the best known was Major John Cartwright, who purchased it all in 1788. Cartwright was a political reformer and was the owner of the estate at Marnham in Nottinghamshire before he arrived here. It didn't take him long to turn Brothertoft's soil into a rich loam, a profitable site for the cultivation of woad. It was assisted by new machinery, some of which was his own invention. At that time there was a building called Brothertoft Hall or Brothertoft House, to which his farm was an ancillary. In 1814 Cartwright sold off much of the land as separate farms. Whilst here, he extended Brothertoft House, and it was considered to be an elegant mansion by commentators of the day. It was originally built by Thomas Saul, founder of the Baptist Chapel in Boston. Brothertoft Farm was extended in the early 19th century by Thomas G., a son of Henry G., a banker from Boston. Thomas G. died in 1871, leaving his wife Anne as an occupant of the hall until her death in 1878. Whilst the surrounding land belonged to Swineshead in medieval times, the manor of Brothertoft was worked by Sempringham Priory. This is why the church in Brothertoft is dedicated to St Gilbert of Sempringham. In around 1131, the man himself was the rector here. This church is not the original building. It's not known when the first church was founded at Brothertoft, but there was some sort of structure here in Saxon times. Whether or not it was used as a church by the Saxons is debatable, but the building that preceded this one had some window arches dating from their time. We only have sketchy records at best of what the previous church would have looked like. It's known though it had a low door with a pointed Tudor arch. Above that was a window of 2 lights with circular arches, and the south wall was pierced only by a door and 2 small windows. At the western end was an octagonal turret constructed of wood. It contained 1 bell with the date 1721. The church you see here today was rebuilt between 1847 and 1854 to a design by Stephen Lewin. It's a Grade 2 listed building and has a small bell tower as opposed to a turret. The chancel is a later add-on. It was built in 1854 in stone and is perpendicular in style with elaborate hammer beam roofs on octangle corbels. The stained glass in the east window is by Wales. St Gilbert's stonework suggests that some parts of the medieval church were used in the rebuild, making it a little earlier than the Victorian date that's often cited for it. After it was rebuilt, it was used as a chapel of ease initially, until in 1922 it was dedicated as a parish church in its own right. This here is Brothertoft Village Hall, and it's a former school. Brothertoft has had 3 schools in its time. This one was called Barley Sheaf. This opened in 1882 and closed in 1969. When it was constructed, it was a replacement for Brothertoft's first school, built by Thomas G in 1856. There was a 3rd school called Hedgehog Bridge. That, though, was elsewhere, quite a distance away from where we are here. Leaving Brothertoft behind, our next job is to take a drive south again, this time through a smaller hamlet called Toft Tunnel. Toft Tunnel lies at the junction of the North 40-foot bank and the B1192 Langrick Road. Today it consists mainly of farms and doesn't really have any major landmarks. Where the name Toft Tunnel comes from is a little obscure. There are no tunnels here, and if you search for one online, it'll point you to a railway tunnel, but it's not located here. After passing through Toft Tunnel, we've briefly taken a turn back onto North 40-foot bank so that we can catch the sight of Hedgehog Bridge School. So it's not greatly exciting, but this is Hedgehog Bridge. There you go. That is Hedgehog Bridge, believe it or not. Now that's not the original Hedgehog Bridge. It's a modern replacement. It was a humpback bridge, but it's no longer here. It's been replaced by this. But it still does the same job. It crosses the drain below us. Now, in Hedgehog Bridge, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that would be what used to be just there. Hedgehog Bridge can be defined as another small hamlet, although that might be pushing it somewhat. It takes its name from a former humpbacked bridge over the drain. The bridge itself no longer exists, but its name lives on thanks to a small lane called Hedgehog Bank. Until 2010, this was the location of Hedgehog Bridge School. Built by the North East Holland Fen School Board, it could accommodate 95 children. It opened on the 4th of April 1881 and became a council school in 1903. It then became a county school in 1947. It finally closed in December 1969 and was demolished in 2010. There are very few traces of the building left now, but records of its existence can still be found online. Our last stop in the parish is Gilberts Bridge, which actually straddles the boundary with Frampton to the east, but we might as well cover it all here. Gilberts Bridge is located on the A1121, some 3 miles west of Boston. Like Langrick Bridge, its name comes from an actual structure, this time the bridge that crosses the south 40-foot drain. Originally it was a wooden structure thought to have been owned by Robert Hubbard, a Lincolnshire native who died in 1850 and was buried in Boston. A new wooden bridge was erected around the time of his death, but was replaced by a brick structure in 1888 by the county justices for the parts of Holland. Entering Gilberts Bridge from the north, as we are, it means passing the entrance to Gilberts Bridge Golf Course, which is easily the biggest landmark in the place. Now, don't be fooled, this is no longer purely just a golf course, it's now a little bit more than that. It's a holiday resort which incorporates the course within it. Gilberts Bridge Golf Course is now officially known as Boston West, and the recent changes have given it a brand new lease of life. It began as a farmstead in the mid-18th century. In the late 20th century, it was converted into a golf course, whilst the farmstead continued in use, with modern buildings added in its vicinity. A full 18-hole course, Gilberts Bridge was established in 1995 and lasted until 2019. That's when Boston West, who run the hotel here today, took over the course. Boston West Golf Course now forms part of the resort, which operates under the name Apple Tree Holiday Park. It's a 150-acre holiday park with lodge-style caravans. So aside from the golf club, you've got the Wheat Sheaf, which is a pub, or more accurately a bar and grill, which is just there. There's a community centre, which is on the other side of the railway line that you can see over there. And I reckon that the thing that Gilberts Bridge is most known for is the other thing we're going to cover before we wrap this one up, and that would be its railway station. Gilberts Bridge Station is an intermediary stop on the Sleaford to Boston section of the Poacher Line. It was opened in 1859 by the Boston, Sleaford and Midland Counties Railway. The station is owned by Network Rail and managed by East Midlands Railway, who provide all of its rail services. Interestingly, the eastbound platform is longer than the westbound platform here. It can accommodate a 3-car train, whereas the westbound platform can only accommodate 2. The station also has a signal box at its western end, which supervises a level crossing and the western end of the single-track section from Boston. However, the station itself is unstaffed and offers limited facilities other than 2 shelters, bicycle storage, timetables and modern help points. On weekdays, the station is served by 2 trains per day in each direction. These go westbound to Nottingham via Grantham and eastbound to Skegness via Boston. And so for this fleeting weekend visit to Boston, we are done. We've now conquered 7 of the 18 parishes here. There's just 11 left to explore. I'll be back soon, so I'll see you again, Bostonites. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.